Yeah, over the last couple years, it really feels like there's been like a resurgence in shooting on film, whether it be feature films, commercials, music videos. It really seems like at least people around me in the film industry are shooting on film for a variety of different budgets. Yeah, which for me, when I see people around me like shooting on film, then it makes it seem a lot more attainable. I think for a long time, shooting on film kind of seemed like this foreign concept that wasn't really within arm's reach. So naturally, after scrolling on Instagram and seeing all these beautiful frames shot on film, and then looking at my own work and just being utterly disappointed, I decided that enough was enough and that I was gonna try to shoot a project on film. So me and my friend Kevin, who directed this project, we had an idea kicking around for a while about shooting a mini doc about a tattoo artist we know. We thought this would be the perfect project to shoot on film because it was fairly simple and didn't have a lot of moving parts. Before shooting this, I've only ever shot on digital, so I knew there was going to be a massive learning curve to overcome. The two main components that I knew I'd have to learn before shooting this project: learning how to expose on a light meter and learning how to load a film camera. So the first thing I did was start researching different film cameras and try to see where I could get my hands on one of them. Luckily here in Toronto, there's an amazing resource called Lyft, where you're able to rent older film equipment for relatively cheap. If you're looking to shoot film and you live in the greater Toronto area, I can't recommend Lyft enough. They're just such an amazing resource, and this project wouldn't have been possible without them. So the camera I went with was the Aaton XTR production model. It's a Super 16 camera, so you get a little bit wider of a frame. It has a little LCD screen which showed you like what frame rate you're shooting at, and most importantly, it has a PL mount, so I was able to interchange lenses. Yeah, that is the main reason why I chose this camera, because I wanted to use the Optar Illumina Super Speed prime lenses, which are native Super 16 lenses. So I contacted the staff at Lyft to see if I would be able to come in and practice loading on a dummy mag. A dummy mag is just a reel of film that's already been exposed. Luckily, one of the staff members, shout out Robin, she gave me a quick tutorial on how to load a mag properly, and then from there I kind of just stayed there and practiced for a couple of hours until I really felt like I had the hang of it. There's also a great video by one of the staff members at Lyft that shows you how to load a mag on the Aaton XTR. It's not very complicated, but however, it does definitely take some practice. I recommend practicing on a dummy reel over and over until you really feel like you have the hang of it. The last thing you want to do is just not load it properly and then all your footage comes out unusable. I used an analog light meter for this. Prior to using it, I just watched a couple of tutorials on YouTube. Obviously, you won't know if you've nailed your exposure until after you developed your film, so I recommend practicing using a light meter on either like a film stills camera, or you can even practice using one on a digital camera. Instead of using like false color or waveform, just use a light meter in order to expose your image. With film, you really have to nail your exposure in order to get a good image. If you're shooting on a Bolex or any other film camera that doesn't have a video tap, like the one I was using, you really have to rely on your light meter in order to expose properly. That's definitely one thing looking back that I regret a little bit. I definitely wish I played around with the light meter more before hopping into an entire project. Before shooting your project, I recommend shooting a test roll and getting it developed. Try some different lighting scenarios with different exposures just to get the hang of exposing on film. If you're gonna make mistakes, which you will, you wanna make mistakes on a test day and not on the actual project. When shooting on film, you should overexpose by a stop or two. You have a lot more room in the highlights when you're shooting on film, but if you crush your shadows, then there's really no coming back. Yeah, here's an example of something I shot on the test roll where I underexposed. There's really just no like information here in the shadows, so I can't bring any of it back. We didn't have any crazy moving shots for this project, so to nail focus, my first IC Ryan just used a tape measure and measured off the focus plane to the subject. You definitely shouldn't eyeball your focus ever, but especially don't do it when you're shooting on film because the image from the viewfinder can be pretty deceiving. So just use a tape measure like we did or some sort of focus assist. So we shot this in a bright interior location, so obviously I had to use ND in order to stop down. When using external NDs and exposing with a light meter, there's just a little bit of math you have to do in order to expose your image properly. So for example, I want to shoot at a T2.8. My light meter is telling me to expose at a T5.6. So in order to expose properly at a T2.8, I need to stop down 2 stops. So in order to do that, I would put in an ND6 into the matte box. This is pretty easy math to do, but when you become stressed out on set, it becomes a whole lot harder for some reason. Especially when you're intentionally overexposing by a stop or two, it can just get a little confusing, so just something to look out for. The roll ended up jamming on me on this shoot. I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but it's probably the way I loaded it. We were getting pretty crunched for time, so the second mag I loaded, I did rush it pretty quickly. Just really make sure you take your time when loading, even when things are getting a little spicy on set. Like, the load is just, it's so vital to this. Like, if something goes wrong with it, like, it could compromise the entire image. And the film jamming actually ended up making this cool, like, perf burning effect that we ended up using in the final projects. So I guess the takeaway from this is, if you want to get a cool image, just like be bad at your job and rush things on set. Yeah, overall I enjoyed the process of shooting on film. Like, it was definitely a little bit stressful with like all these learning curves I had to overcome, but it definitely made me a lot more thoughtful and intentional when planning my shots. Yeah, obviously you can't shoot like endless takes shooting on film, like, unless you're a millionaire. So you have to make sure what you're getting is good. This project was very simple in terms of everything. The lighting was very simple. The camera movement was simple. We shot this in one location. I feel like if we shot this digitally, it wouldn't have turned out as good, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Shooting this, I was so dialed in on making sure my exposure was right and making sure like the mag was loaded correctly that I kind of overlooked the actual image I was making. I feel like I could have done a better job with lighting and framing if I wasn't so focused on these elements. So maybe shooting this on digital would have created a better product. I don't think you should shoot on film if you magically think it's going to make your footage look better. If shooting on film fits the mood or can enhancify the mood that you're already going for, then I say definitely go for it. It shouldn't be treated like a magical LUT that you just slap on your shot and then it makes everything look amazing. Even though I do admit that it kind of does make shots that maybe aren't so great like look a lot more interesting. So let's just shoot everything on film and then we have to do less work making a good image, right? Yeah, so that's it for this video. If you like this kind of stuff, then hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.